What's up, Saint Vitus land? How we doing? Welcome to the Friday edition of the Age of Quarantine. We're gonna be here, joined by Alexis from Daughters very soon. Cheers, everybody. TJIF. You. Man, another day, another quarantine hang. Thanks for joining us, guys. Want to say thanks to everybody who's been given to our Kickstarter. It's going extremely well. This one's definitely for you guys, and we just really appreciate the support. We're having a lot of fun with this Age of Quarantine thing. So here we go. We got Lex on the docket here. Linking. Oh, Alexis, how you doing, man?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to do okay too. I think that's the move, right?
I hope that's what everyone's doing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thank you for joining us. First and foremost, it's really great to talk to you. And man, we're just gonna, take a little trip down your musical history and just, have a chat, a chat amongst semi-acquaintances.
Right.
So Lex, the way that I've been starting these off, at least for the ones that I've been doing, is, we're getting kind of deep in this thing. So I'm trying to remember what kind of like real life was sort of like. So I'd like to ask everybody where they are currently,
Right.
and if they know where they should have or would have been on this day or relatively in this time.
I think what I would have, I had some solo shows at like Roadburn in New York. So I would have recently been returning from Europe, tired and satisfied probably, but instead I'm in we're in like rural Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
So I live in Philadelphia, and when this kind of started coming on, it seemed like I don't really trust the 1.5 million people in case she gets crazy. So kind of like took off, and I've been hiding out in this really old, creepy house for a while now, and
Wow.
yeah, there's like 3 Mile Island outside of the window. It's a strange place.
A lot of people just like, yeah, I'm at home, and I like your answer. Like the Escape from Philadelphia answer is good.
Yeah, I mean, we live right downtown, like right in the house, and it's it got to like it started feeling really uneasy just going to the store and living in an apartment building. It was just there wasn't a good vibe, and we sort of had the moral debate is like is what we're doing like kind of taking advantage of things, and like we should like stay where we are, and that type of thing was a conversation we're having. And I just felt like I'd hate to get sick and be on a ventilator and then think like, oh, I wish I had just kind of gotten the fuck out of here instead. And so
yeah,
it was definitely a debate we had, and weren't really sure what to do, and we struggled a little bit, but it's just
it's a time of weird decisions, hard decisions to make, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know. I'm happy about it. We're out here, and it's quiet, and we're getting get some writing done, and trying to stay busy and stay in touch with family and everybody, and just see how everyone's doing, and so it's been pretty good, as good as can be.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So, basically, we're gonna start from the top, man. We're gonna start from the way back. Well, everyone's got some time. So, I usually kind of start with being a kid. What were the kind of like earliest interactions you had, just kind of with music? When did you start finding that you kind of like loved it?
I always did. I was obsessively singing songs to the radio. There was a hit to the Beverly Hills Cop theme.
Uh-huh.
That like it's an instrumental track.
Mm-hmm.
And, I made up words for it when I was a kid, and I was always dancing around and singing like a fool. So I have an older brother, and he got me into kind of the punk and hardcore and like New York hardcore and a lot of stuff. And I became kind of fascinated with that. And
Was that when how old were you when you like were first started kind of like, kind of creeping into that world a little bit?
I was probably like, I mean, I became interested in it, and I didn't understand the world, when I was,
Mm-hmm.
I was, 6, 7 years old. This is like the early '80s. So, I think I started going to shows probably like the early '90s, and the first show I ever went to was at the LNG in Connecticut,
Mm.
and I saw The Business, Madball, Warzone, Hatebreed, Marauder.
God damn, that was a war zone. Warzone played, and that was a war zone.
It was the scariest experience of my young life. I was like 14 or something, and Warzone showed up but didn't play because they got there late, and Madball was playing when they got there, so they just hung out, and then Hatebreed didn't play for one reason or another. But Marauder was incredible. They were great.
Oh, great band. I always shows, I think at that time too, they weren't these things that were as so meticulously planned, even on, especially like on the underground level. Like,
Yeah.
I remember going to see, I don't know how many punk shows, and like half the bill wouldn't show up, but like that's kind of what it was. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of didn't know, or the communication was still pre-internet, so it wasn't like, oh yeah, so and so can't make it, and you get the word, right?
Well, you get. I mean, I don't know how many times we, going to shows in the '90s, like playing a show, and we just get lost. You'd have to call the promoter's mom or something, and then like have to like, oh, here you need to call this number now, and it was strange. I really appreciate the amount of effort you had to put in when booking shows, and like you leave your own phone number, you put your own phone number on a flyer, and you write directions, or like, here's a drawing, here's McDonald's.
Yeah.
Left at the light of the McDonald's, and then the VFW is over here down on the right. And I really appreciated. I didn't recognize that we were putting so much work into it, and I'm appreciative of that opportunity, and what I was able to do when I was a young person, like booking shows and playing shows, and that the amount of effort it took. It was. Looking back, it's it's humbling. I think now where shit is like, we have booking agents and management and all this stuff for us now, and it's like, yeah, I remember you just like couldn't show. You just couldn't. You got lost and you couldn't play. And you're like, oh shit! I mean, we tried our best, and we're just driving around Stamford, Connecticut.
Yeah, or even just the technology to pull it off so like much more easily, and to iron things out. And it was. There's definitely a romance to that. That's definitely a little bit lost in the instantaneous vibe of today's culture, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
For real. So, for you, I mean, you start participating in this culture, you start going to these very scary shows. You're a kid, you're like, oh, all right, great. When did you make that kind of leap where you started saying, I'd like to, start participating in this world? Was it being in a band right away? Was it doing other things?
Well, I had so realizing that there was an accessibility like with punk and hardcore. Growing up, once I started kind of get a grasp of it, and realized that it was much more interactive than trying to become like a rock star, and like getting into Ted Nugent and just like trying to follow that path, like be the next Kiss or some shit like that. Like that seemed not like reachable. That's unattainable. Yeah. So punk and hardcore shows and all that, it was just like it was happening down the street, or there was a good chance you knew somebody who was already into that. And like that show in Connecticut, that Madball show, was like, I had a friend who she used to go to shows, and one night she was like, hey, I'm going to the show in Connecticut, you should come. I said, oh, okay. I didn't know who was playing or like really what was going on. She said, oh, there's a show, just come on down. Yeah, all right, cool. It was like, kind of local shows. We're playing when I was 14, 15, I started playing with some friends, doing like Slayer covers and Sepultura covers, and in a basement, just kind of screwing around, and that was me just like kind of, getting my feet wet or just cutting my teeth or whatever. And realizing that, oh, this is like very much for me. And once I realized that the guys I was playing with kind of like, well, maybe we'll play a show someday. Like we kind of read some songs and all this shit. It was just like, no, I've got to keep going forward. You know, what was, you know, massively helpful. And I can't overstate it enough that my good friend Mark Thompson, who ran Hydra Head Records with Aaron Turner, right, years and years, many years ago, did a radio show, a college radio show when he went to Emerson College in Massachusetts, and he had a show called Nasty Habits. It was on Sunday nights. It was from like 11 to 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or something like that. And I stayed up every Sunday, and like, you know, everything I got into was through Mark. And I think the co-host was Johnny Shoon. And I stayed up late and recorded, and I'd bring these same guys I was playing with and be like, yo, I just found out about like My Dying Bride and Paradise Lost, and it's like Bad Slapshot and like all this crazy shit. And they were like, yeah, this is cool. We're like just gonna dig into this Pantera record that we still listen to. Just like
over and over again, right?
Yeah, this is, yeah, like I've got to find somebody else who's trying to like envelop themselves entirely in this world, and manage to do it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me just how really influential those smaller like circles were. For me, I grew up on Long Island, and Hofstra University Radio was pretty big. And there's this woman named Tammy Bako, and Tammy Bako, wherever you are, Tammy, what's up? Tammy used to run the metal show on WHRU, and that's where I heard like I Hate God for the first time, and like all this wild shit. And it was because she went to my high school, and when she graduated high school, she was a senior and I was a freshman, and she went on to do that. And that was like Tammy Bako like opened the playbook, and I was like, oh fuck, that's Vision of Disorder. Wait, they're from around the block, you know? Like I'm like, what is this, you know? And you know, Sick of It All's from Queens. I got cousins in Queens. What's this? And they seemed kind of big at a moment, but then that democratized it down. But it's really when you really find that like one moment, and it starts pulling that thread through how much more you start getting, and then you're like, you're in a little bit of an arms race with yourself, right? You're like, I want something heavier, I want something faster, right? Yeah, it's pretty.
I love that. I mean, it's kind of a comfort, as much as it can sort of be a pain in the ass that everyone's kind of in the same place doing the same thing, and when you're young, I think that it's. I mean, maybe that's just for me, and maybe I'll speak for John and Nick when we were young, that like it wasn't competitive, that we were just we weren't cool guys, you know, and so maybe it's different in New York, but like where we were, it's like we weren't cool, so we weren't like, oh, we want to hang out with this crew of guys. It was like we just want to play with bands we like, and we want them to like our band so that we can all play together and hang out. Like that's all we wanted to do. We weren't interested in being like, we're going to show these guys, we're going to like be the best band, we're going to play the biggest shows. Like we were just like, yo, we just want to fucking hang out. Like we just want to like be accepted, you know. And it was you know, it was nice to be received and to find a place. And Providence was great for that. Like it was a small scene, and you know, we settled right in, and yeah, it was great, you know.
I have to say, it's impossible to think of your daughters not being cool, in my opinions. But Long Island also definitely isn't cool at all. So don't mistake me for one of those original city kids.
I don't know. I think Nihilistics were from Long Island, right?
Absolutely, they were.
Right,
good one, Lex. Good one, Lex.
Great New York hardcore band.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Yeah, plenty of good music come out of Long Island, but it's just strip malls and bullshit. Yeah. So you grew up in Providence proper, or like right around it?
I moved around. I lived in my parents were separated. They were never together. So when I was born, it was a lot of going back and forth between my mother and my father. So I would live in one place for a little while, and my dad was constantly moving. So I would be in Brockton, and then I would be in Walpole, or I'd be in Norwood, or I'd be like, you know, once my mother settled in the Cape, my father continued to move around. So it was like weekends and summers. I was kind of hopping all over the place. So my therapist would say that I was looking for consistency. And so when I got kicked out of my house as a teenager and I started sleeping, I stayed at John's I lived in his basement for a couple of years, and Yeah, so his parents let me stay there while he finished high school, and then in like '98, I think I moved to Providence, and then I found my consistency. I was like, well, now I'm an adult. I'm in charge. I'm fucking staying here. And then I same apartment for like 7 years. I never left, and so I moved to Providence probably '98 and or '99, and just
out of all the places on earth, why Providence?
I'm really a nervous person and very uncomfortable. I don't like crowds, and I'm believe it or not, like not attention seeking and boisterous and braggadocious or anything. So it was like Boston seemed too much. So Providence was very close by to where we were, and so it was 30-40 minute drive into the city, and so that's where we started going to a lot of shows, going to Providence shows, as opposed to a lot of people were going to Boston, want to go see all the shows in Boston, and we dabbled, but Providence was so close, and it didn't have this like kind of macho aggro theme. I don't know.
I feel like that's important, right?
Yeah,
because
a lot of weirdos, and that got right in there. So
RISD, the very famous art schools there. I feel like that always brings new and interesting kind of young creative energy into Providence. I really like Providence, but it's just kind of an interesting choice for like a young person who perhaps will go anywhere. You know, some people are like, I'm packing up, I'm going to LA, like Axl, like off the bus.
I mean, that never interested me. I never even left New England until we did our first tour in like '97 or something like that. That I had never gone I had never been out of New England, and I never flew on a plane until we did our first tour in Europe. I had like, you know, if it were not for playing music, I would be in a small town, like, you know, hanging drywall or some shit, or, you know, and like dating my girlfriend from high school. Like I got married to her. You know, I wouldn't have done anything otherwise. So,
that's pretty amazing that's like the conduit. I mean, we're kind of similar in that regard, because I grew up on Long Island. I currently very recently lived in New Jersey, and then I lived in Brooklyn. So my whole life is like an hour radius. And like that's about it. I've been a lot of fucking places and stuff like that. But as far as living, I've kept it kind of tight too, except that I've been next to the Thunderdome of New York City as opposed to Providence. Right. So speaking of Providence and the scene there, I just felt like at a certain point with Lightning Bolt and Daughters and like all this stuff, like there was something there that was happening around Providence, and all the warehouse stuff that was kind of coming out, and all these just really wild bands, and you'd hear about the shows there and the energy there. Can you describe that scene a little bit and how Daughters kind of fit in and was kind of thriving in it when it first started?
I don't know if we ever fit in anywhere. I think we wanted to.
Yeah.
But we never had like a scene that was ours. I don't believe. We played, you know, like dive bars and shitty venues, and we had played. I think they had closed down by the time we did Daughters, but previous band As the Sunsets, we had played Fort Thunder a couple times, and you know, shows at our own practice space, and we opened for Mission of Burma at Lupo's Heartbreak Hotel, which is a large venue in the city. So we were just everywhere. Like we played wherever we could, and there was certainly a scene where there was more of a warehouse scene where people like Lightning Bolt and Landed and everybody were playing, and there were places where there were bands like people we were hanging out with, like guys like that were in bands like no one's ever gonna know, but like Day After and At Any Cost, and these like really cool kind of not metal, not hardcore, kind of crossover bands. So we were all playing together at a lot of shitty venues, and we were able to exist there, and we were in a lot of places at the same time, and I can't explain it. I don't know why, but we didn't have like one home. We were kind of like nomadic within the several scenes in the city, and you know, as far as like the warehouse people like Lightning Bolt, we never fit in properly with that, and I think that it wasn't until we made some changes in Daughters, you know, several years later, that we kind of were like the genre-less band. But you know, during those times, I think that we knew everybody and we were all friends, but we kind of didn't really belong there. And
I can't really like locate it. I just, as far as like from an aesthetic perspective, I like when I think of Daughters, I'm not really thinking of a place or a region even, you know, it kind of exists on its own, which is kind of an amazing thing. But I feel like it was pulling from all these things, and there was that influence.
I don't want to give anyone to end up with some misconception of the city, because there was a lot of cross pollination, and you could play a show, you know, with Airborne Radar and Lighting Bolt, and like somebody would be playing like a pump organ or something like in the middle of it. It was just like, everybody was like, yeah, this is cool. Like, we're all just like here to play shows, and the one consistency was this like bizarre thing that was very you maybe be more familiar with it from like early New York days, but like nothing started until like 2 a.m.
Oh,
you go to shows like
brutal.
You get someone, it would start at midnight or something, and so those shows were strange to that. But you know, from what I've read early New York shows were kind of like that. I read
I think that was always kind of the thing too. Like shows used to really run late, like back in the days, and all that stuff. I actually want to go back for a quick moment, because you just mentioned As the Sun Sets. Was that like the first kind of real band that you put your stamp on? You're like, I'm the singer of the band, now we're really doing stuff.
Yeah, John and I played together in a band before that. That was we never recorded anything, or we never properly wrote songs. We had songs, but the guitar player and the bass player never talked about them, so they played whatever they wanted to play. So it was terrible. And I have a VHS recording of a couple shows, but I'll never show that to anybody. But As the Sun Sets was when John and I were kind of like, although I guess before that we were a variation of that band. It was called Cast Off Skin. We were big fans of that Ninja Scroll movie.
Yes.
So it was just for artists. But and that was just sort of kind of run-of-the-mill hardcore, but we wanted to be more of like kind of metal crossover type shit. So yeah, we did you know, and we recorded records, we toured, we did a lot with that band, and that was the first like real band, I'd say, like a real band that we were in.
That was the first band I ever heard you sing in, and I was just like, yo, this band's fucking great. And like, you know, I was getting into stuff kind of like Burnt by the Sun and things like around, like approximating those different zones. And I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Like I get this. And then that was kind of on board for the ride, and then it seemed like it kind of abruptly sort of just ended. Can you kind of speak about that, kind of those transitions, and what was going on?
So, you know, myself and John, who played drums in Daughters, and then Jeremy was playing bass in As the Sun Sets, and he became a guitar player in Daughters. And we were the three people. We wrote all of the music. We organized everything and booked everything, and we were meeting people, and our two guitar players kind of were just, somebody wouldn't show up for practice, somebody was too drunk to do anything, to like he lost his guitar or something, you know. It was always a bit of a mess. So we were on a tour. We went down to we had a short East Coast tour. Had several shows in Florida because we had just signed with this label called Undecided Records. And they had put out, there was a band called Eiffel back in like the early aughts. And then Super Machiner was like a Jake Bannon project that he did with somebody from Deltonic. And they were doing a few things. And, you know, we signed with them and we got in there. And they weren't really interested, it seemed, in who we were. They kind of wanted us to be a particular type of band. And I was told to turn around and face the crowd. He was like trying to give me tips on how to perform, the guy running the label, and they had messed up something in the layout. And I said, yo, the packaging is wrong. Things are wrong. And he was like, well, you know, people work pretty hard on it, so you should just be happy. And I was like, this is not. And then we got in a fight with a guitar player, and it was just it was a big mess. So on the drive home, this story is much longer than it needs to be. But on the drive home from such a terrible experience.
Here for it.
Yeah, right. Well, we all got nothing. So we sat down, Jeremy and myself and John, and we sat down. We were getting gas, and we were at a gas station. We sat down on the curb and said, like, we'll get home and we got to put an end to this. Like, we'll start a new band, and you know, we're the three people writing the music and organizing everything. We should do something. And got home and broke up. Yeah, and got our friend Pat, who used to sing for a band called Force Fed Glass.
Great band.
Yeah, Bastion as well. He sang for them. He came in to play bass. Didn't know how to play bass, which was fine because Jeremy had been playing bass and As the Sunsets didn't know how to play bass when he joined As the Sunsets. And we were like, well, this is not new territory for us. This is simple enough. So Jeremy played guitar, and then Pat came and played bass. We were practicing in Pat's bass. He had a small apartment. We were just practicing in his bedroom for a bit. And I brought in Nick. Nick showed up, and there we were, went on tour, recorded a couple songs real quick.
The Nick showed up's a pretty big moment there, I feel like, the Nick showing up, right? Because of how that kind of changed the course of things. Well,
we knew Nick for a while. We had a few songs written, and Nick came in, and you know, we banged out a few more and recorded real quick, put out a 7-inch, just like this one-sided 7-inch. Some friends of ours put it out, and we were packaging, like on driving to the first show, we were like stuffing records and folding everything over. And that first 7-inch was such a pain in the ass. Like a slip went over. It was really hard to get it on. It was such a fucking nightmare. But
I have that 7-inch, yeah. And it kind of goes like this way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I bought it,
and then you put a wrapper on it. It goes in the sleeve. It was so Jeremy. He went to RISD, and he had to make everything complicated. Everything had to be far more complicated than everything needed to be. So that was like a hallmark of that school, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, that was it. You know, we figured we're doing all the work, and this is why continue this? This is run its course, and we're all done. And let's start something new.
Sure. I mean, when I first heard Daughters, and it was around that time, I was in my first band called Aeschylus, and we played this crazy fest in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, with you guys headlined it, and an Albatross played too, yeah. And shit like that. And I saw Daughters, and I was just like, what is this? But like in the best way possible. I'm like, it's so dissonant and fucked, and like this is in spits flying everywhere. And what is going on? And I loved it. And then I didn't even know at that time that there was this As the Sunsets connection. You know, like I'm not like really following it sort of that much, and it just felt so tumultuous. What were those early days like for you guys? Was it just like, because that felt like it was breaking the speed barrier, like when I saw it? I was just like, what is this?
I don't know. I don't think we were trying to do anything like unheard of or difficult. You know, none of us were really that. None of us were like oozing talent or anything like that. We were just we were having fun, and I mean, like I said, we had guys didn't know how to play their instruments joining the band. Like we were just like, we wanted to have fun and hang out, and especially coming from what the last couple years of As the Sunsets was just like such a nightmare and such a pain in the ass. And we wanted to just have 5 people who were good friends and were happy to be together and were happy to be on tour, and you know, weren't going to complain, and everybody knew people, and when we're happy to be out, and like, oh, my friend is in this band, and you know, and everybody had a connection somewhere. So you know, before it was like, you know, John would be like, you know, straight up cold calling somebody, be like, yo, I heard that you do shows in this area, can we like come and play? And people are like, I don't fucking have anything for you, man, like who are you? So it was a much better operation, and you know, people who were just kind of familiar with the scene, or I hate that I just use that term, that were just kind of familiar with what was going on, and were able to kind of network and make touring easier, and just the whole process and experience much more pleasant than just a bunch of people like fighting each other, and people not interested, and really like giving, you know, all of themselves to the project.
Yeah, everyone's rowing in the right direction now, and like you don't. Yeah, at the very least, you have a lot of things to fight in this world as a band, without fighting yourselves, right?
Yeah.
And so that's like a very, I think, important mentality. I just saw in the comments, by the way, guys, if you guys want to submit a question for Lex later on, use a little question box. We'll take some audience questions like later on. If you see me looking to the side, I'm just checking the time and the NFL draft. Thanks for saying. But so at that time, I feel like, when did you start feeling like Daughters really started having a bunch of momentum? Because I felt like it was like this small, when I saw you guys in Wilkes-Barre, I was like, wow, this is new and it's small. And then the next time I think I saw you, it was a knitting factory, and you had a handlebar mustache, and there was like 300 people there. Or, you know, you had this thing going.
Yeah,
and yeah, dude, it was. I was like, wow, this motherfucker is taking it to new levels. And I felt like the visceral reaction of the crowd was matching the intensity of the band. And when did that exchange start happening? And sometimes very confrontational too. Yeah. Like, fuck you, fuck you. How did those shows kind of feel for you?
I don't know how that happened. Just the evolution of my own. I can only speak for myself and just say that it was supposed to be like some sort of evolution of my own personality, where I was becoming like excessively combative for a while in As the Sun Sets, and like insulting the crowds, and we would be in Florida, and I would just talk about how much I hated Florida, and I mean, no one liked us, so I guess it was just kind of some way of us like acting out. That we're like, you don't like us anyway, so what difference does it make? But you know, when we did Daughters, it was like, oh, we're all one, man. Like we're all doing this together, and this is such a wonderful thing. And it was, and I would say very positive things. You know, hey, we're all happy to be here together. And then I think I got really into drugs and alcohol, and more so than I had been. And my attitude started to shift. And I think performance-wise, I was sort of, for a long time, trying to get comfortable and like playing the role of a front man or a singer in a band. Like, you know, in the 90s, I would play without my shoes because I had seen Daryl from Snapcase do it. So I was like, well, you take your shoes off. Like that.
The No Shoe Club, you were in it. Wow.
So I don't know what I thought it was doing, but I was like, well, this is what thing you do. And this is what, so I think I finally got into like the self-exploitive, exhibitionistic, heathenistic person that I might have truly been once I settled into myself. And I suppose that was like one of the corners we turned as a band. I mean, at least performance-wise, that began to change things.
I felt like you guys were the anti-hero of like a lot of things. Like, I feel like I think if people were into fucking Daughters, they fucking loved it. And then other people were like, you're a lunatic for liking that bullshit. Yeah. And to me, I love that though. I loved the polar side of it. And you know, to me, it harkened back more to punk in the performance sense. But then you were giving me this really obtuse heaviness that I was craving from like an oral sense this way. And the marriage of it was wild. But then I felt like as the band got bigger, certain people wanted to feed into, for lack of a better term, that sort of like on-stage negativity. Yeah. Was that a hard thing for you to maybe find that line or to feel that?
No, I don't think I was even aware. It was just, that's how I was. And I didn't notice it till oddly when we did some shows back, and then we played those 2 shows at Vitus, and I
heard of that spot.
I was very sober, and suddenly I had to interact with the crowd, and I realized how much I didn't want to do that. It was I wouldn't say it was easy to do when I was drunk. It was just like, I think I was drunk and high and whatever, and it was often kind of about me in the moment. Mm-hmm. And now I realize how kind of disgusting that is, personality-wise. And my interest is just like to perform and for everyone to have like an experience that can be their own, and not necessarily be like, let's go watch this guy piss in his face and, you know, fall off stage. Like, I mean, you know, any fucking fool can do that.
At a certain point, it runs its course, right? Like, you're like, okay, cool. Like, now I've seen Daughters and they're doing this. And not for nothing, but, you know, from the time that I'm speaking about to that Saint Vitus show you're talking about is about a decade. So, right. There's a lot there, right?
Well, I mean, there's like what 6 years off, so we didn't do anything for quite a while there. So I'd like to think I grew as an individual. I mean, I got sober and cleaned up and changed my life in some ways. So yeah, I mean performing in itself is just a different experience to some extent. But you know, to the earlier question, I mean, I suppose like when did we notice things were changing, and I don't think we ever really noticed. If I was going to be honest, I'd say that like when You Won't Get What You Want came out is when I noticed things were different, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'd say like when we got that fucking 10 from the needle drop. That was like, well, like all these like 17-year-old kids are getting into us. Like we had a whole new fan base. It you know, coming back, there was a fear that like there were people who never got to see us play and heard about us, and that's why they were coming to see us on this first string of shows. And there were people who had seen us, thought they'd never see us again, and were coming back. And then we thought, well, once we run through those like however many people, that's it, we're all done.
Sure. Like you run the course of that sort of nostalgia point, or like how many times are you going to play stuff of Hell songs and kind of songs and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I booked those shows.
Yeah.
For anybody who doesn't know, I'm one of the owners of Saint Vitus, and I'm the head talent buyer. And I was really excited because I've had a long personal history with the band, but I didn't know what we were going to get. You know, I was like, these motherfuckers are coming back 7 years later. Like, okay, cool. There's other bands who've done it, but I'm like, dude, like, who would have thought these guys are train wrecks? Like, let's see what the fuck. Like, literally, I was so excited. I'm like, what the fuck do they got?
Yeah.
And I personally remember you guys playing those shows. And first of all, they both sold out right away. And I was like, oh, okay, this is even better than I thought. Okay, cool. Let's make some money off the bar. You know what I mean? We all got to live over here. But I was also very excited to see the interest, you know, and I was like, cool. And I've seen, you know, certain bands come back who've had that, and they've had that moment, you know, where you're like, okay, that's cool. So many people who didn't get the Daughters experience, who've heard the wild stories, who've done all these, they're going to get that. That's great. And I love giving that to people. But then I remember being at the shows. I remember seeing the reactions to the older songs and being like, yeah, woo, okay. And then you guys played a new song. And I was like, holy shit, okay, here we go. And I'm like, yo, everyone lost their mind. It was great. And then you played another new song. I believe you played 2 new ones. And I was like, I think that this has more fucking legs than I ever really thought. And I remember talking to you, and you were saying like, fuck, I haven't done this in years. And you were like, who, you know, you were confronting, I think, that those moments. Yeah. But I think that was a moment where I was like, I can't wait to see what these guys are actually really up to. And that's a huge testament to coming back. I think people really need to understand how fucking rare that is. There's like Daughters, there's like Dinosaur Jr., there's like a handful of bands that can come back after so long and really create new echelons for themselves. So that's an amazing testament to the band.
Yeah, it feels good. You know, that, yeah, like I said, it was a fear that this was like going to be, it was going to be short-lived, and we could do this for a year, and then we'd get asked to do a couple of fests, and then that would be the end of it. And it's not what we wanted to do. Well, I think we believe we were going to just do some shows because it wouldn't be necessary to do more. Like I said, we thought it would be pretty mellow, and you know, there wasn't going to be a lot demanded from us. But when You Won't Get What You Want came out, we realized pretty quickly that this is going to demand a lot more of our time, which is why Sam, who's been playing bass with us since 2000, when Pat left, and Sam came in 2003 or 2004, whichever it was, and had been with us the whole time. It was like, you know, he's like, I have a real job that I like, and I can't leave for 7 months. Like I can't do it, and it's not something I want to do anymore. And you know, we had to make that adjustments. But John and myself and Nick, I think we thought that it would certainly be something we would regret later in our lives if we didn't finally. The opportunity is now here. We have to take advantage of this. We have to see what's going to happen. And we did it with, I think we all were trying to do with some humility though, and like have some perspective and think that like to just stay very thankful and appreciative, and to know that like it's very likely temporary, and let's just try our best and hope for the best. And that's, and I'm still feeling the same way. Like I mean, you know, like how do we follow that you won't get what you want? Like it got so much praise and all this crazy shit that like we've never ever had before. It was completely new to us, and it seemed like we're not going to be able to do that again. Like whatever happens next is not going to be the same thing.
I think you got it by being yourselves and just following the course, you know? Like to me, when I heard the first, those songs, I'm like, this is Daughters. It's just another Daughters. And I think that the evolutions within the band have been pretty vast, you know, and like in different ways. It actually kind of brings me to my next question, which is really like, I was interning at Vice Records, and Jamie Farkas at the time was helping run Hydra Head.
Yeah.
And there was this huge bin of stuff. Then she's like, yo, kid, you can have whatever you want in here. And I'm like, botch last show DVD. I'm just like, boom. I'm like, ISIS, this and that. And I got Hell Songs by Daughters. And to me, that's like your like Dylan Goes Electric moment. I like put that fucking shit in, and I was just like, who the fuck is singing from this dude? Is it the same dude with the, and I was like, oh my God, like, you know, what is this? And as a singer, I was just, as well, you know, I was just kind of blown away at like how, not just how drastic, but like how considered and great that move was. What was sort of behind the kind of just like, hey, I'm getting a new sonic palette and I'm just going to go this way? How did it feel?
Well, you know, there were supposed to be some singing on Canada songs. I was kind of going to go back and forth with it. And I was nervous. I was just too afraid to do it. And I couldn't commit. Like I was afraid. So I didn't. There's some spoken stuff here and there on that record. I think there's like 2 or 3 songs. But we were asked, 31G asked us to contribute a song to a birthday party tribute. And I thought, well, there's absolutely no way I can scream. Like, I'm not going to scream this birthday party song. So I got real drunk and I tried to sing it. I tried to do this like drunk Elvis impression. And from that point, it was like, well, this is just what I have to do now. This like, I kind of got it out of the way. And I've, you know, curiosity, maybe like 2 years ago, I maybe 3 years ago, I listened to that song. I hadn't heard it in a really long time, and it's horrific and embarrassing. But I needed to do that. If I didn't do that, I never would have. I wouldn't be doing it now. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, maybe I would have ultimately at some point done it eventually. But that was the moment where it was just like I'm gonna just gonna jump off the ledge and see where I land. And you know, I'm really happy that I did that. Even though when I look back, it is unbelievably embarrassing. But
I think I mean, it's kind of interesting, you know, take someone like John Joseph, you know, he tried to find himself somewhere in like an HR place, but then he fell in his own like amazing spot, you know, and sometimes it's interesting what that one little catalyst is. Like, hey, we got asked to do this birthday party thing, and here you are redefining, you know, your kind of your vocal delivery and everything like that. And for me, that brought me into Hell Songs in a whole different way. I was excited by it. I was like, cool, what is this? And you know, on the latest, it feels like you kind of merged a lot into a new thing. When it comes to delivering that kind of vocal performance, do you feel like that impacts your writing of lyrics and stuff like that, just based on how you're doing it?
Well, you know, when I sang and recorded Hell Songs, I didn't say a lot of the words, so I just kind of screamed. I was just trying to get timing, and I couldn't remember the words, and I was very unprepared to record, and so the words were meaningless at that point, and I realized that if I'm going to sing, I'm going to have to not necessarily have something to say, but I'm going to need to, you know, I was reading an obscene amount back then, and knew that I couldn't be a writer. I wasn't going to write any short stories or a novel or anything, and this was going to be as close as I could get. So I started creating narratives and characters, and you know, so it was helpful for me to be kind of cognizant of just relaying the words, or making a better attempt at relaying the words and whatever information or telling the story. That became important to me, and the two things worked together. Were like being able to understand what I was saying. It was important that I put thought and effort into what I was writing, and you know, through these years now, over these last 3 records, that my voice, I think, has changed, and the writing style has changed a little bit, and it's, you know, I'm getting older and I'm always trying to figure it out. I don't imagine I'll sound this way on the next record. So I'm not trained. I don't know how to do it correctly, and you know, there are a lot of things I want to be able to do vocally that I can't do, and you know, I'm accepting of that, and that I've got to learn and get better, and so yeah, and the same goes with the writing. You know, right now when we finished the record and recording, I was typing out all of the words to send over to Ipecac so they could get the layout done. I remember going through Ocean Song thinking, like, I've used some variation of Paul's, like him, his, he, like just too much. It was too much, and I thought I would really love to go back right now, and that was just a month later. But it was like, I would love to go back right now and just be a little more aware of that when I was writing it. But I wasn't, you know, there are times where you write it and it feels like this is done, and everything is in its right place, and you record it. Sometimes I'm at the microphone and I'm like, this isn't going to work. And, you know, that happened with Daughters Spelled Wrong. There was some extra lines that I took out. And recently, Chris and I were sitting, I was going through all these old notebooks, and I found the notebook for You Won't Get What You Want, and had like all the old words and all these old things and things I was trying to do, and extra verses and places, and I could see, like, luckily I caught some like major errors or some things that weren't going to work. But you know, afterwards I'm looking back and thinking, like, well, this also didn't work. But you know, if you don't decide it's done artistically, if you don't at some point say, like, this is finished, I have to do the next thing, you'll continue to just like make changes. And you know, I've got to, like, this word doesn't work, and this thing, if you don't tell yourself it's done and move on, you'll just sit on the same thing.
Sure. And it's one of those things too where it's interesting, those decisions too, because you look at things maybe from a literary way, like after the fact, and you kind of like, you think that. But in when you feel them in the visceral way, when you're actually seeing them and it's delivering something that you want, it's music, right? It's not poetry. And like where those lines are sort of drawn, they're difficult, man. You know what I mean? Like you read it on a page and maybe you go, but then you hear someone sing it and you're like, oh, you're like, Friday I'm in Love sounds pretty fucking good right now. Like,
well, you know, but I think something like the lyricists I've always admired so much are people like Leonard Cohen, who and you know, and Nick Cave, who have always been able to write. You could take the lyrics, remove it from the context of the song, and it's it works on the page as well. And you know, of course, like there are things where that absolutely doesn't work. And yeah, Friday I'm in Love. I mean, yeah, that sounds great. I don't want to read that in a book. I mean, Jesus Christ. You know, I remember there's a book that's.
But if old Robbie is singing it, I'm there for it, dude. Like anything.
I love you know, Velvet Underground and shit, but like when you was reading like the collected works of Lou Reed, and I was just like, this is fucking garbage. I guess this is not. So yeah, you know, it doesn't have to work in both places. I would like to at some point find myself there, and I think at times I've done it, but like,
it's a great goal, lofty. You know, like that's a lifetime of work.
I mean, even Bowie lacked consistency, so I'm not too worried about it. But
sure. R.I.P. So we got about, you know, this thing kicks you off after about an hour, so we got like about, you know, 10 minutes left and stuff. So we're going to take a couple of questions from the crowd in a second, but I really quickly want to touch on, you just finished a record.
I did, yes.
Your record.
My record.
Could we talk about your record and what made you want to do a your record?
Because being in a band is excruciating. And just agreeing on it can be something as simple as like merch designs or photos or some kind of like promotional shit. It can be very, very difficult. And I wanted to do something that was just mine, that was for me, that I was in control of everything. And that wasn't what wasn't what Daughters was doing. You know, I wanted it to just be my record and my interests, and to have complete control over everything around it. So that was the big motivation. I wanted something that was mine exclusively. So.
Hey, that's good as any. And so that's just recently finished. So there's no plan for it just quite yet. But
it was. But I mean, now.
Oh, okay. So there was, and there wasn't. Fuck.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, I'm not worried. I feel like eventually it's going to come out. By that point, I'm going to be so tired of it. I don't want to fucking play any of it. But
maybe you'll make a new one.
Start right now, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck it. Why not? Okay. So we're gonna hit the comment box.
All right.
And see what's going on. I get to pick, so we're gonna do that.
Sure.
Ooh. Okay. Here's a good one. Favorite New England hardcore bands of the late '90s. Give me like.
So Hal, of course. Hal has recorded so many bands back in the 90s, and has several weird Daughters and As the Sun Sets shows on his page.
Sick.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. You can kind of get lost in there. But so my favorite band was a band from New Hampshire. They were called Ukla the Mock, and they put out one record on like Life Sentence, and they were amazing. They're still like one of the best live bands I've ever seen in my life. They like changed when John and I we were in As the Sun Sets and we saw Ukla the Mock. We realized that like we are nowhere near where we want to be. Like we've got to like step our shit up. Similarly, I think with a lot of us, when like Dillinger put out Under the Running Board,
ooh,
all of us, like all of the peer group of their contemporaries or whatever it was, everyone was like things have changed and we're gonna have to like step it up. Like Ukla was like the first band that did that for us. We saw them play and thought like we have to step it up. Like
that's great
shit.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing too when you kind of like look at a band and you're like, oh, I make music and I don't make music like this. Fuck.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's see what else we got. Let's see. We got some statements in here, and did you guys tour Latin America?
We did 2 shows. We played in Chile and Sao Paulo.
Because this is what we got here. How was the tour in Latin America? Hope you enjoyed the brownies in spite of all the rush. I
did enjoy the brownies. They were very good. I sat in my hotel room alone and ate them, and they're very good. But I had a great time. That was a really amazing place to be.
First time in South America?
It was our first time. Yeah, we had never been there.
And for you as a person?
Yeah, I had never.
Yeah, my family is from Colombia, so I have a special affection for South America and Latin America, and I love it.
Yeah, it was great. It was surprisingly cold. We got to Chile. We played at night in this big outdoor festival, and I was a little disappointed by the weather, but the people were amazing, and everyone was. We did a panel discussion, which was the first time I had done a panel discussion. I felt a little silly, but it was a lot of fun. It was really great. Everybody was really cool, and it was a wonderful experience. I would love to go down there and play again. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. Panel discussions, the Daughters panel discussion.
Yeah, it was strange.
Oh, here's a good one. Do you have any gnarly forehead scars? And I imagine this is from the old bash to the microphone forehead routine.
I have a lot of scars. My forehead is mostly scar tissue. It's kind of off-colored. It's white. It's mostly just white in here. I have some scarring. I hit in the face with a guitar. Started show in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It busted my face up. I have a crack in my skull and the scar here from getting hit in the head with a guitar. My face is a lot of scars. I've been hit in the face with a lot of guitars and microphones and things. Yeah.
Dude, Daughters is like Fight Island for the UFC. It's fucking it's wild.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I would like for it to seem more like a Bachelor in Paradise than Fight Island.
Oh, okay. I like that. Good for you. Okay, we got this one's a nice one. Who is your favorite contemporary lyricist from because you mentioned Leonard Cohen, but maybe
right now, I think Reed from Bombara is an outstanding lyricist. Really, really good lyricist. Probably my favorite contemporary lyricist.
By the way, if you guys do not listen to Bombara, they are from Brooklyn. They're fucking amazing. They're a really great band. Yeah. You should check them out. They're fucking fabulous. Check out Bombara. So Reed, he's number one. Anybody else? 2, 3? Anybody else that kind of lifts your spirit?
Reed's sticking out right now. I can't think of anyone else at this moment.
Cool. That's all good. Let's see. We're going back to the videotape.
You know, actually, you know who I'm going to say?
Who's that?
She's upstairs. Kristen Hayter, I think, is a brilliant lyricist. Yeah.
Young Lingua, man. Fucking phenomenal record. Did some shows for her last year. It's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. Can you talk about your sometime martial arts interest?
I can talk about it a little bit. I haven't trained in a few years. I dislocated my shoulder on 4 occasions, and I have...
Jiu-jitsu? That sounds like a jiu-jitsu injury.
That was a jiu-jitsu injury, yeah. So I dislocated twice on the mat, and once during an FI show, and then once at a daughter show. I dislocated it. I was dry humping the floor, doing my best Prince impression, and when I pushed myself up onto my feet, it just popped right out. I had surgery, and it's supposed to be okay, but I've been on the mat a couple times, and I'm kind of like gun shy, and that's how you get hurt when you're...
Yeah, you don't commit.
Comfortable, you don't commit, and you can get hurt. You can hurt somebody else, and I miss it terribly. But I haven't trained in a few years, and I would very much like to get back to it. But I kickboxed and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu for several years.
It's the best, man. I fucking love it. I train Muay Thai with my buddy Gavin from Absolution and Burn. He has a gym in Brooklyn called PCC. So shout out to Gavin. He trained both me and Chris, and it's one of the best things for you. So maybe when we can all see each other again, we can all punch each other in the face or something else. Yeah.
Friendly combat.
Friendly combat. Maybe even at a daughter show while singing a couple of lyrics, So,
why not?
This is a nice question. How or why do you pick your openers?
Why do we pick our openers? Because we kind of don't want to be saddled with like some band that a promoter in Tucson thinks should be opening that is doing a version of Daughters from 2003. Like we don't. I don't know. I mean, people might want to see that, but we're at a time in our lives where we also want to have a good time at the shows and meet people we want to meet and see some bands that we want to see and now we have the ability and to control that, so we try our best to do so. And normally it's just we have Bombard play several shows with us, and that's a band I've said. Everybody, I really dig this band. I want them to play some shows with us. And so we say, sounds great.
Just that simple. Some community,
And with same with Pop 1280 did the other Vitus show with us, and that was a band that I really dug and I wanted them to play. And everybody gets somebody's listening to something and says everyone should check this out, and we'll give it a listen,
and go from there.
But yeah, this is cool. Let's bring them.
Cool. So we got 1 minute remaining, and so Lex, I know we're on the 1 minute zone. That went pretty quick. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. So just thank you again, guys. Yeah. Thanks for watching Age of Quarantine and donating to the Kickstarter and helping us out. Lex, you've been wonderful. So we got 45 seconds remaining. Give me 3 records that you're listening to in the quarantine. Tell the people.
I'm always listening to some Scott Walker record.
That Scott Walker Son record kills me, man.
I didn't dig it until just like maybe last year. I kind of gave it a chance. I think I was a little jealous that Son got to do a record with him. So, but I really dug it a lot. I don't know. I think that I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately,
Give me a podcast or two.
The podcast called Criminal that I really dig a lot. There's
a good one.
judge. She's got a very soothing voice. I listen to several news podcasts. I think Counterspin is kind of like a news program
Cool.
talking about the news, other news.
All right, Lex, we got 2 seconds.